Prepared and alert of your surroundings is a top priority during active shooter situations. There are signs and there are ways you can stay prepared for an active shooter.
And to talk more about that, we're joined this morning by Jeff Zisner, President, CEO of Aegis Security, providing full-service security, investigative, and training programs. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You're the perfect person to talk to because a lot of people this morning, in the wake of what happened yesterday, are convinced, telling themselves, this could happen in any workplace. What can I do? What should I be on the lookout for? And that's sort of what your training involves, correct?
Absolutely correct. Yeah, and it's been very, very busy the last 24 hours. You know, we're unfortunately the people that are getting the calls when terrible things happen in the world. And the training that we teach is designed to make people more aware of their surroundings, get them better prepared to be able to handle the situation, and prepare them with the tools and techniques needed to be able to survive when the bullets really do start flying.
So tell me a little bit about what do you tell clients in terms of just being aware of your surroundings in advance of a shooting situation? What are some of the red flags? How do we identify a situation that could become something, and how do we avoid it getting to that point?
Yeah, so just about every single active shooter incident that I could recall, there are stressors that are placed on top of the people that are committing these crimes. That could be financial, that could be work-related, they could be personally related, and they compound on top of each other that present themselves in warning signs and behaviors that are noticeable to the people around them. Now, what we're looking for here is the people to identify that something is off with the person that they know, and to lower their barrier to react, to actually do something about it and report it.
Right now, we know in this instance, the ex-wife of
the gunman
said that he had talked about killing his coworkers.
Would often have mood swings that went from very happy to very angry and would come home very disgruntled. I suppose it's incumbent on not just employees, fellow employees, but also friends and family too, to be on the lookout for signs like this.
And that's the hardest part, is you want to believe the best things of your loved ones. You don't want to believe that they could be the next person that's going to do something like this. So overcoming that barrier and reporting, hey, my loved one is doing something or saying something that's a little bit off, hopefully they'll get the help that they need. But best case scenario is you potentially avoided a major catastrophe in our communities.
So if, let's say, it happens that there is a workplace shooting in your place of work, do you have any tips? What are a couple things that people should keep in mind?
So the first thing you need to do is plan ahead. You know, having your mind where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to take cover, how you're going to escape. And if it comes down to it and push comes to shove and you have to respond, you know, work together as a team, improvise weapons, and come up with a plan, even if it takes 10 seconds to disarm and deal with the shooter, because there's nobody else there that's going to be able to save you except yourself.
Does part of your training also include self-defense tactics to disarm? You just talked about that.
Yep, we absolutely touch on self-defense tactics, and we talk about how to use improvised weapons to give yourself an advantage over a situation where you might not otherwise have one.
I presume that's a last resort. The first rule is just try and get away, try and run.
First rule is always get away, put yourself with as much distance between you and the threat as possible. And if that's not going to work, then hide, lock down, put yourself in a place where you have something to protect you. And if push comes to shove, like I said, then you have to fight back. You have to fight back with aggression, with improvised weapons, preferably as a team.
Now, obviously, these are very high stress situations when stuff like this is happening. What are some things you recommend people absolutely not do?
So the first thing that gives it away is having your cell phone on. If you get a call in the middle of this, you could potentially give away your position. So always put your phone on vibrate or put your phone on silent. The other thing is, don't be screaming and yelling. The bad guy probably is looking for someone to hit. They're not going to go around indiscriminately shooting. So screaming for help isn't going to help you. Be quiet, be direct with your movement. And obviously you need to remember to report whatever you're seeing or feeling or doing to the police so they can guide in their officers to respond as quickly as possible.
If it gets to a point where you find yourself confronting or being confronted by a shooter, how and there's a possibility perhaps maybe of de-escalating the situation. What can people do to try and turn down the temperature of what's happening around them?
So by and large, there are very few instances where active shooters are able to be de-escalated. Most of the time, these folks end up taking their own life or have police assist them with that. That being said, using open language, being able to communicate with them, being empathetic, trying to be able to close the gap between you and them so you can do something hands-on if you need to, are all things that are going to give you an advantage when you might not otherwise have one.
Mr. Zisner, thank you so much for joining us this morning with these tips. We appreciate your insight and your knowledge, and I think it's going to be beneficial to a lot of folks this morning that, again, trying to process what we saw yesterday and trying to plan ahead for maybe preventing this at their own workplace. And I think your advice about just keeping aware of any red flags that come up and not being afraid, like you said, to report it. Would you suggest to HR, or who do you report to if you suspect somebody's behavior is just not congruent with what they normally do?
Yeah, so what you're looking for is anything that is atypical, and it's perfectly okay to report it to HR. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, it's also okay to report it to the police. There are trained investigators that handle these kinds of things every single day. And the hope is that we could intervene and intercept someone on the pathway to violence before something actually happens.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for your time this morning.
My pleasure.
We'll be right back.